Hi, I just wanted to make this quick tutorial showing how to annotate and label customer service ticket data with AI. Um, this tutorial uses Python as well as Google Sheets for storing the information. Um, so with that said, we'll just go ahead and get started. So the first thing you're going to do is run this first line of code. To save a little bit of time on this tutorial, I've gone ahead and already ran this. And then next, you're going to run this line. Really, all the first line is doing is bringing in some extra libraries that aren't already installed, and this is just making it so we can use the libraries that we need. So now that we're here, I'm going to go ahead and run this. And when you get here, you're going to see that it's going to ask you to authenticate. And this is just so that you're able to store your data, access the Google Sheet, and also store your data on the Google Sheets. So when you get here, you're just going to click Allow, choose your email, and then Continue. Okay. And so now that that's done, now in this next line, we're actually going to be bringing in our data from our Google Sheets. Um, and we just have two Google Sheets that we're going to look at. So the first one is just our data here. So if we look at the data here, we can just see we have a list of customer service interactions and a place where we are going to store our tags here. And we'll get a little more into what that's going to look like later in the code. But we're just going to do three different examples with this where we're going to store it. Now, I already have a sheet where I have ran this data. So here I have all I have the tags and everything ran, and so we're just going to look at a couple of examples running it, but then after that, because this is already ran, to save a little bit of time, we're just going to refer to this sheet as well. Um, but going back to the code, so the first thing, as we talked about, is we're just going to connect to those Google Sheets through these URLs. Um, so now that we have authenticated and we've done that, we can do this. And now that we go down, now we're actually going to grab the data and the different sheets. So this variable is actually going to be where the variable that represents the sheet. And this is actually going to be Panda's notebook that stores the data from that sheet for us to reference. So we're going to go ahead and run this. And then we also have a sheet called labels, but we'll get into more of that later. For right now, we'll just start with the first very simple example of how to tag with a LLM. So the first thing that I'm doing here is I'm just setting up a schema of how I want the answer returned. Um, so the reason for this is because we want a way to easily extract the data for placing in columns, and generally this method has worked very, very well for me. So now that we have the schema set up, then down here, this is a prompt that's actually this is a tag that's actually going to create the prompt. So now that I've run that, now we have that example variable stored, and then we're going to click on this create prompt variable. Um, and down here, we're actually running an example from our first notebook. We're using the first example just so we see what that looks like. So all that's going to happen here is it's going to store that example here within this tag to create this prompt. And also whatever ticket conversation information we give it as an input, it's going to put it here. And these tags just make it so the LLM is a little bit better at understanding your meaning and what you're trying to do. I found sort of putting your information in these pseudo HTML tags really helps the model know what to know the context of what you're doing and what's in the model. Okay, so now then to continue, so down here is where we're actually gonna use the LLM. So the LLM that we're using is Groq, and there are many different LLM sources that you can use from. You'll see a couple of them when I go through where to put in your API key and how to reference it. Um, but this, but the reason I wanted to use Groq is because Groq right now is very fast, very useful, and also free. I know they're gonna switch to a paid tier, but right now there's only a free tier and it's unlimited. So if you want to get started with this, this is a really good model to use, and it does a pretty good job of for this use case. So I'm just bringing in Grok for the API and also Google Colab to store my API key. Now here is where it's referencing that API key, and it's just using the name that I set for that API key. So if I go here, then I have like my different API keys that I'm using here referenced. And you can see that, and here is where I'm storing my API key for Grok. So once you put your API key here, as long as you have the exact same string that you have here when referencing your API key, when clicking that user data, then it'll reference that API key. Also, a good thing to note is when you're sharing this, the API keys won't share in your notebook. So if you want to work on this with another team member or something, you can share this without having to worry about your API inference being stolen, or your API key being stolen and used by someone else. So that's also another cool feature here that I just wanted to point out. But basically, that's all you do to reference the API key. And here's where actual ticket conversation's going. Um, we're using the Meta, which is Meta's 70B model, and we're setting a low temperature just because we don't need. Uh, we're using you're using this model more of as instruction than it is to actually do something creative. So mostly, if we're really thinking about this, we're using it to summarize something. And then here is just making it so that it forces it to return the answer in JSON format. And it's also referencing that create prompt function. So when we run this, then it's putting in the fourth interaction here from our labels or from our ticket conversations. And then it's saying poor customer service. So if we go to our LLM with no guidance, and really these are all in the same order, so it doesn't really matter. But if we go to the fourth entry, which we'll get into a little bit later, but on here is labeled as the sixth entry, then and we look at this conversation, we can see that like the agent is kind of rude. So it does give us some valuable insight. But let's say you wanted to know like more of like what the agent was. Um, you wanted more information, then we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, let's get into how to store that on the page. But it does seem like we're getting some initially some pretty valuable information out of this. Um, So now that we've ran that in that test case, now we're just going to take all those interactions and save them to a list right here. And then down here, we're actually going to run that function from Groq that we made, and now we're going to place those results on the list. So if we run this and we go back to our sheet, um, one thing you'll see is that these results run fairly quickly. Um, at least they should. What did we do? Ah, okay. So this is just saying I hit my rate limit, which is something that comes up sometime with the free tier. It looks like I'm hitting this on the Google Sheets, so I'm just going to add in a time real quick. Let's see how well I remember my Python. And then we're gonna go time.sleep, and we'll just go to, and it looks like this one's not coming from the API, but from Google Sheets. So it looks like it was writing too fast to the sheet. There is another way that can handle this, but since that's not really the purpose of this, I'm just gonna do this, and this should make this so that now we get the results like this. Okay, so now you can see that it puts the results on here pretty fast, and it's putting them in that JSON format that we had earlier. So now that we're looking here, we can see here where it has that for customer service and it has an agent tone. Here it has this was a shipping issue, and it gives a reason. The customer issue is related to the delay in receiving their package. And if we look here, then we can see like they're talking about like the package and it arriving late. So you can see here that you get some pretty valuable information because we are trying to save time, and the Google API today uh, is making me slow down a little bit. I'm not going to run this thing, and again, we have all these results ran. So now I'm just going to refer to the sheet where it's already ran. So if I go into this sheet and I look at our first example here, which is number 6. Oh, sorry, and this is a little get ahead of ourselves. But if we go into that first example here, which was the number 6, and we can see the poor customer service. And then we're also just going to get into how to extract these with the first customer service tag and this. But one thing that I want you to note is how many tags we end up with initially from doing a pivot of that summary tab. And you can see we get pretty good information, but one thing that we're going to want to do is sort of refine this a little bit, because if we look here, like some issues can be like a little bit redundant. So we have a technical issue, hardware issue, and technical issue, printer compatibility, which like a printer can be considered hardware. So we're probably going to want to clean this up a little bit. But especially like if we've never done this effort before, or if we've never tagged our data, this can be like a good initial step to see like what sort of issues we're affecting. So we can see we have shipping issues, routing issues, and this can really help us develop a list. Um, so first thing we're going to do is just go back here, and now that we're here, we're just going to grab that, we're going to rebring in that data, just because The first time we brought it in, like we only had the values that were in the conversation field, but now since we have some tag values, we're just going to go ahead and run this. And now we can get some information about and now we can talk about extracting that information. So really the only library that we need to use here is this AST literal, and that will extract the information that is storing in in those JSON tags. Uh, you can use the built-in JSON functions, but I found, especially it doesn't happen so much anymore, but early when I was using this method and there wasn't really like a place to force to use JSON tags, it'd be a way to grab the JSON tags if there was like extra text given with the answer. But I found that AST literal works pretty well in this scenario. So anyway, when we run this, then we can see that like the output that we get from this is like the explanation. So it's extracting the explanation from each of those tags and placing it uh, back in that column for the cells we ran. And then this is just what's going to place on the sheet. So this uses like row notation. So if you think about this as this row being 1, 1, and this row being 1, 2, and this row being 1, 3, then this row would be 2, 3. So as this goes down, it's going to stay in the third row, but then it's going to iterate by 2 each time because we have in our programming, when we enumerate, it's going to look at this first row as the 0th row. So we're going to want to add 2 to get it to the row that we're actually talking about. And we're always going to be at the third column. And then here is just where it's going to place the results. So that's all that's happening here. So when we run this, we can see the results get placed on the sheet. And this should run really quickly, and it does. So now you see we have that information there. And then here, the only thing we switched was the column because now we're referencing the 4th position. So if we run this, then it's going to do the same thing for the 4th column as well. Um, so now that now that we've seen how that works, and we've also seen the data as it's extracted and how we can do some like initial like analysis and use that data. One thing we probably want to do at this point is come up with a custom list of issues that are affecting us. Now, this is something that you can do individually, or it can be a really good team exercise. So you can come up with really good ways to tackle this. And it can both be individual or collaboratory. So this is just like a really good step to get information out of your data. Now, in this case, it's customer service data, but really this works for any step. You would just you would just modify it to your use case. So you'd still be taking in text information, and you would still be tagging and giving an explanation for that tag. So it's really versatile for what you can use this for. But now that we have this listed and we've gone through this, the next thing we're going to do is go into a LLM with out tags. Or sorry, now we're going to give it definitions. So here, so from that first exercise, one thing you can do is come up with a list of primary and secondary tags and also definitions for them. Now, there's a reason I have it set up this way. We'll get into that later, but um, but basically, initially, these uh, let's say that initially we only had like these secondary tags. So from that list, we came up with like, oh, here are like the main issues that affect us. Then what we could do is take these secondary tags and just give all of them to the LLM to give it a little bit more guidance as it's tagging that ticket. And that will help us get a little bit more accuracy out of what we're looking for. Um, so now you can see like here is just giving like all those tags here, just so that's all that's being stored in that all defs function or variable. And then here, we're having the exact same prompt as the first. The only difference is we're giving the ticket labels and definitions here in that all def section. And then here you can see what that looks like. And one thing to note is that it's a lot longer, so it will take up a lot more tokens. But it should give you a little bit better results than just feeding the information to the LLM and asking it. Especially if you're looking for specific information. Um, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to develop another LLM function, and this time we're going to reference that fourth function again in the sixth spot. So if we run this, and I think I forgot to run something, I did. Okay, let me go up here. Got to run this, and I forgot to run this. Okay. So, good reminder to make sure you're running your cells because I forgot. But now as we go through this, so now when we run this fourth function, then we're getting back that this is now we're getting back by feeding in that definition. Now it's giving us back that this is a technical malfunction and the customer is having issues connecting to their printer. So it's giving us a little bit more information about like what went wrong according to the definitions that we're looking for. And then this is how we place it on the page and everything again. Now I did this and also stored that in that pre-completed sheet that I'm going to share. So one thing to note is that this one takes a lot longer. So for the other two the examples that I have here, it goes all the way to 200. This one I only have going to 152, and that's because each time you're feeding that all those definitions in there. So it really takes the LLM a lot longer to read that ticket and to both summarize that ticket. And because of how long the ticket is, the longer the information, generally, it has a little bit more trouble trying to get information that way than if we go to our third method. But you can see that it does give us a little bit more information. And if we go to the pivot here, granted we only have 151, but you can already see that this is a lot less than our other values. Or it's a lot less and it's a lot more organized than our initial values that we got back from this first ticket. So now when we look at this, um, one thing we might want to do is find a way to reduce the amount of tokens that we're giving to the LLM and also um, find a way um, to well, I guess that's it. We're going to try to reduce the amount of tokens we're giving to the LLM to get it to be a little bit faster and also a little more accurate. So, so now with that, we'll go back and get into our third example. So here, after we tag this, we would just store this on the page again, much like we did in the first example. But then now we're going to get into our third example, which is our choose label function. Now, really, all this is going to do is it's going to look at this label page. Oh, sorry. Let me, okay. So all this is going to do is it's going to look at this label page and it's going to say if it has primary, then it's going to give back a list of these primary tags. And once it selects that, then it's first gonna ask it to select a primary tag, and then from the first answer, we're then gonna ask it to select a secondary tag. So to help us with that, that's what this choose label function is gonna do. So really, we're gonna use like a similar template to the first, but this part, if it's primary, then it's gonna return all the primary definitions for initial tagging. But if not, then we're going to get back that tag from that secondary tag, and then we're going to use that to return the values, to return these, to return the secondary value, to return the secondary tag values that belong to that ticket. So, for instance, let's say we had account management, then we would look at this and we would say, okay, what issues are under account management? And if we search, then we can see that we have creation issues, login problems, and account settings, and then here are the definitions for them. So then in the second prompt, or in the second LLM question, it's going to ask this targeted question of just these three issues. So this will get us a lot better accuracy, and it'll give some other hidden benefits that we'll talk about later. But just to show, like right here, if we wanted to look at documentation gaps and we put this in this function, then this is what's going to be returned. Um, so like let's say this was like the second prompt and we had documentation gaps, and that's what we come back in this create prompt function. So we're just going to go ahead and run this now that we've talked about this. And here in this function, now um, now we're just doing the same thing. One of the only differences now is that we have a space for the label type and tag, and by default they're none if nothing's entered. So if we run this, then we have this, and now, the one different thing about this is that this isn't the final function we're going to run. This down here is the final function we're going to run. And that is just because we're going to run through this function twice. So the first time we run it, we're going to run it with that primary key. So we're listing all the primary, so we're asking it just like, look at that ticket, look at the ticket for that row number and get that primary tag. And then for the second time, we're going to get that secondary. So uh, sorry. So then once we have that primary tag, then we're going to get the tag that it's giving us out in the summary. We're going to get the summary of the tag and store it in this tag variable, and then we're going to feed that tag to the second variable to then store that in our final answer. So to see what that looks like with the example we've been using, we're going to use this. Oh, and I forgot to run this. So let me do this. We're going to use this label tag for. And now that I've run this, you can see that that now it's giving technical malfunction, which I think it did give something similar for the second time we ran it. Let's go back and take a look. So if we go to our LLM with guidance and we go to number 6, then we can see, yep. So we got a technical malfunction, and then it's giving a summary of capability issues. Um, and and the one we just did, we got a technical malfunction and capability issues. Um, For this time, it looks like we got the same answer for both. But one thing that we can kind of do to compare is then go to this third one. And here, when you run through the code, it's going to first save the LLMs, the primary and the secondary LLM, and then it's just going to extract the primary summary and the primary explanation and the secondary summary and the second explanation. And then here, I've saved the guidance. Um, I copied over the tags from the guidance, and then here I'm just checking to see if they're equal to each other. For the example that we have, which was the sixth one, we can see that they both came back as equal. But for a lot of these, we can see that there's a little bit of variation. The first one, it came back warranty claim, or sorry, in ours, it came back warranty claim replacement request. But in and really this should, and I'll change this for the ticket or once I send this out. But really, this should not be the no guidance. This should be with the full tags in. But when we see this, this one came back product quality durability concerns, and this one came back as a warranty replace. So when we look at this, um, it looks like there are some concerns about the durability, but it does look like the warranty is better tagging of the issue. Um, so you can see that this can like really get you like very targeted results as to what you're looking for as compared to the open approach. And also this runs much quicker than feeding your whole prompt to the than feeding like all your definitions to the LLM. And also a third benefit of this is if we go to this LLM with primary and secondary tags, then one thing that we can do is start to get a idea of how something's affecting us overall, but then also how sub issues are affecting us. So here we can see that the technical malfunctions are uh, the technical malfunctions, hardware issues are affect us at least in terms of technical malfunctions. And the most common for us is software bugs in this scenario. Also, the product quality is the most common issue is material defects. Uh, but the least common issue is durability concerns. So we could say like, oh, looks like our products are pretty sturdy. But in terms of quality, like uh, we need to look at the materials we're using. Now one thing, now this might seem weird, because like why, if you're having durability concerns, uh, why are you having material defects if you aren't worried about durability concerns? So there is like a little bit more that we could refine on this and mess with the definitions to get this like a little more useful. Um, but you can see that this sort of gives us like a more granular look and also a more granular look into how the issues are affecting us. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Um, and uh, if there is anything else, please send me any questions. But I hope you find this helpful and have a good day. Thank you.